Hi guys, welcome back to my kitchen. Today we are going to be canning up 2 different recipes using plums. It is that time of year and I have a bunch that I need to get preserved. Now, the main way that we will preserve the bulk of our plums is typically by dehydrating, and then we just have those on the pantry shelf for snacks throughout the year, and that works great. I also made up a batch of plum sauce a little while back. I did share that in a video here. And I am always looking for new ideas. So we are going to be trying a new recipe today, which is a plum salsa, which I'm really excited about. It's new to me, but if it turns out good, that's going to be an awesome way to use up some of our plums and also kind of stretch our tomatoes a little bit. So we're going to be trying that together. And then we're also going to be making a plum jalapeno jam, which is something that I've been doing for the past few years and that a lot of you have requested I share. So the first step in our salsa is to get our tomatoes halved and cored and then into a dish, and we are going to roast those. Now, the recipe doesn't call for including the onions and the garlic in the pan to roast, but I am going to do that because I think it's just going to add a little bit more flavor to the salsa. So these are Dr. Witchy's. This one has a little bit of a bruise on it, so I'm just going to cut that out, and then we're going to get them in here. So for this recipe, we need 2 pounds of tomatoes. It calls for 2 cloves of garlic and then 1 medium red onion diced. Now, typically you would want to do this on like a baking sheet, so everything is not as crowded as this, but our oven isn't working, so I'm doing this in the toaster oven. So I just kind of have to work with what's going to fit in there. And then if you didn't want to roast the garlic and the onions, you would just want to dice up the onion and mince the garlic, and that would be added into the pot with everything else. So as I mentioned, the recipe calls for 2 cloves of garlic. I personally feel comfortable adding in a little bit extra fresh garlic. If you are not comfortable deviating from the tested recipe, just stick to the 2 cloves. So this is all ready to go. I'm going to put this into the oven at 350 for 20 minutes. Then I'm going to flip everything over and then continue roasting for another 10. So I have 3 pounds of plums here, and I am just going to remove the pits from them and then get them added into my food processor. Okay, so that makes for 2 pounds of plums in the food processor. Now, we are just going to pulse this. I probably could have done it in a couple batches, but we'll make it work. Okay, the tomatoes, onions, and garlic are all done. I'm just gonna let those cool off a little bit, and then we are going to get them chopped up in the food processor as well. Now, the recipe calls for 3 habaneros. If you do not like the heat of habaneros, I would just swap in jalapeños. That is considered a safe substitution if you're substituting the same amount. But I do like habaneros. I didn't grow any this year, so these are just from a local farm. So I'm going to probably just quarter these and add them to the food processor, and they will get all chopped up with the tomatoes, onions, and garlic. So I'm just gonna pinch off the skins from these tomatoes. They come off really easily. And then we are gonna get this all into the food processor and then just pulse it up the same way we did the plums. Okay, so I'm just getting the tomatoes, onions, garlic in here, as well as all the juices that drained off. That will have lots of good flavor. Okay, I'm hoping the audio turns out okay in this video. We have paving going on next door, but this is the time that I have to do this, so we gotta just work with it. So I am just adding in 1/3 cup of bottled lime juice. It does need to be bottled to make sure it's the correct acidity. And then we're gonna add in a teaspoon of ground coriander and 2 teaspoons of sea salt. So I'm just gonna give this a good stir, and then we're gonna bring this to a boil, and then once it comes to a boil, I'm gonna reduce the heat down to medium-low, and we're gonna allow that to simmer for about 20 minutes. Okay, the last ingredient that we're adding in, I almost forgot, is 2 tablespoons of tequila. This is optional. You do not need to include it if you don't want to, but I've got it and might as well. The alcohol is going to cook off anyway, so don't be worried about that. And it's only 2 tablespoons. Okay, so I've got clean hot jars, and I'm just gonna get these filled to 1/2 inch of headspace. I am so excited about this. We used more plums than tomatoes in this, so this is gonna be a great way to use up some plums and also stretch our tomato harvest. I'm really happy with how this turned out. And we should get 4 pints from this. Okay, I still have some in here. I'm gonna get another jar cleaned up and see if we can get a full pint from that. Okay, so only about 1/2 pint extra. I could put this into a 1/2 pint jar. I'm not gonna worry about it. We're just gonna save that for the fridge. So I'm just getting these rims cleaned up with some vinegar really well, and then we're going to put on our lids. I'm using my 4 jars lids. As always, I've got my coupon code down in the description box below if you wanna save some money. These are definitely my favorite lids. And then we're just gonna put on our rings to fingertip tight, And these are going to process in a water bath canner for 20 minutes, adjusting if you're above 1,000 feet of elevation. Okay, while that salsa is processing in the water bath canner, we're gonna get started on the plum jalapeno jam. And this is one of my favorite things that I put up as far as jam goes. It is great on cheese plates, charcuterie, like baked brie, that kind of thing. Really awesome. So you just need 3 ingredients for this. You need the plums, the jalapenos, and some sugar. Okay, so I have 3.5 pounds of plums here, and I'm just going to remove the pits and then slice them thinly and add them into my pot. Now, you could do this in the food processor. You just have to be really careful, because if you do pulse them too much, you can kind of end up with more of a butter consistency than a jam, and that's not what I'm looking for. So I am just going to thinly slice them and get them into my pot. Next, we're going to be adding in our jalapenos. So I am just going to finely chop 6 of them. Now, in this recipe, I have done anywhere from 6 to 12, just depending on how hot you want it to be or how hot your jalapenos are. Sometimes you get some that are really mild, other times they can be quite a bit spicier. And I am choosing to leave the seeds in, but if you want something that's not quite as spicy, you can always remove those. And then we're just going to be adding in 3 cups of sugar, and then we're going to give this a stir, and we're going to allow this to macerate for probably about an hour. I usually like to do it overnight, but we've got a barbecue to go to this afternoon, and I'm not going to have time to do that. And the point of letting it macerate is the sugar is going to start pulling the juices out of the fruit and dissolving, and that's just going to help speed up the cooking process a little bit. Okay, so this has macerated for about an hour, not quite as long as I typically like to leave it, but we are just working with the amount of time that I have today. So I am going to bring this up to a boil over high heat. And once it reaches a boil, I am going to reduce the heat down to medium high. And we're gonna try and keep that at like a low boil for about 30 minutes, stirring frequently. This isn't something you wanna walk away from. Okay, so this is getting close to being done, and I just tasted it and decided it needed more jalapenos, so I am adding another 4 into this batch. Okay, so this is ready to go. Those jalapenos that I added are fully cooked through, and this is about the consistency that I'm going for. If you want to be more precise with it, you could use a food thermometer. For the gel stage, you would want to be at 220 degrees, or you can put a plate in the freezer, scoop some of this on there, and make sure that it sets. Okay, so we're going to be filling 1/2 pint jars to 1/4 inch of headspace, and then these are going to process for 10 minutes, again, just adjusting based on your elevation if needed. And this is something that I've been making, I think, since 2019. After we moved here, we just had so many plums that I needed to use up, and I was always looking for new ways to do that, but I think this would be really good with habaneros as well. I'm just going to wipe all of these rims off really well with some vinegar to get off any of that sticky residue that I definitely did spill on there. And then we're going to apply our lids, apply our rings to fingertip tight, and we'll get these in the canner. So we ended up with 8 1/2 pints total, and as I mentioned, this is really good with cheese plates or charcuterie. It's also really good as a glaze on meat or mixed into like a marinade with some like white wine vinegar or apple cider vinegar, some olive oil, and garlic. That works out really well. Okay, that wraps up today's video. If you're like me and you're always looking for new ways to preserve plums, I hope you found this helpful. Thank you guys for hanging out with me in the kitchen today. I'll see you in the next video.